The movie begins with a shocking scene showing multiple dead bodies lying inside a restaurant. What caused this tragedy? To uncover the mystery, the story flashes back to the past. We are introduced to the main character, Nancy, who is in a field taking a pregnancy test and sees a positive result. This news frightens her, as she is still unmarried and hadn't expected this to happen. Worried and anxious, Nancy heads to her father's restaurant, where she works as the manager. On the way, her car runs out of fuel, so she decides to walk the remaining distance. Along the road, she meets Bobby, a restaurant employee riding a bicycle. Bobby offers her a lift, and together they reach the restaurant. Upon arriving, Nancy's father informs her that he will be leaving for a meeting that night, and she will have to manage the restaurant in his absence. Nancy agrees, believing she can handle everything. Her father mentions that he's asked Jack to stay and assist her, but Nancy is displeased, as she doesn't like Jack. She requests her father to let Bobby stay instead, but he declines, stating he has already made arrangements with Jack. After leaving her father's office, Nancy suddenly starts to vomit and rushes outside the restaurant where Jack happens to be smoking. Seeing her in this condition, Jack guesses that she is pregnant. He asks whether her father knows about this, but Nancy stays silent. Just then, her father arrives and she becomes nervous, though he doesn't notice her state. She had only come to inform Jack to greet every customer politely, and that Nancy would assist him in doing so. Nancy couldn't hold back anymore, and finally asked her father what kind of meeting he was attending and if it was truly urgent. Her father replied that ever since her mother passed away, he had been feeling very alone, which is why he had decided to remarry and was going to meet a woman. Hearing this made Nancy even sadder. Now she would have to share her father with someone else. Nancy and Jack had now entered their hotel. Everything was running smoothly until a group of young boys suddenly appeared outside. These boys were behaving terribly, racing bikes, creating noise, and had even killed a rabbit near the hotel. Such a scene could scare away their customers. Nancy became furious and stepped outside to send them away. She warned them to leave immediately, but they ignored her and instead followed her into the hotel wearing masks, asking her to take their order. Nancy snapped and asked them whether they would leave on their own or if she should call the police. When the boys didn't move, Nancy pretended to dial the police. This scared them off, and one of the boys told her they were leaving but would definitely return. The way these boys humiliated Nancy made everyone laugh at her, and this made her even more upset. She gathered the staff and firmly reminded them that she was their manager, and it was their responsibility to show her respect. She tells them that it's their responsibility to obey her instructions because she's the one in charge now. In response, Jack tells her that everything belongs to her father, not her, and she hasn't earned any of it. Jack also adds that they are more skilled than she is. Nancy gets furious and, reacting to Jack's arrogance, fires him on the spot. Jack is taken aback and says she doesn't have the authority to do that, but Nancy replies that she is now the manager and her decisions will be followed. Angrily, Jack removes his apron and walks away. Nancy had acted purely out of emotion, and she herself was confused about what had come over her. She goes into the restroom, splashes water on her face, and tries to calm down. At that moment, Bobby is shown waiting for her outside. He offers to stay the night to help her since she had fired Jack and would be alone at the store. Nancy becomes even more annoyed, thinking Bobby is pitying her and trying to get close. She bluntly tells Bobby that he's not her type and he doesn't need to do such things to win her over. Bobby feels deeply hurt by her words and quietly leaves. A short while later, the rest of the staff's shift ends, leaving Nancy alone for the night, having to manage everything by herself. She begins by cleaning up the place and, as no customers arrive, she calls her father. On the call, she tells him she let Jack go from his job. Her father is shocked, and Nancy explains that Jack was being rude and humiliated her in front of everyone, so she had no other option. Her dad, now concerned, reminds her to stay cautious through the night and to contact him immediately if anything goes wrong. Nancy wasn't scared at all. She resumed playing music and continued working with enjoyment. But this enjoyment lasted only until she noticed the gang outside her hotel, the same ones who had arrived that afternoon. Upon seeing them, she grew angry and made an announcement over the speaker, warning them to leave or she would call the police. After making the announcement, she realized all the windows and doors of her hotel were wide open. She knew the police might take time to reach her, and if those people decided to attack, it wouldn't take long. With that in mind, she quickly began shutting all the doors and windows. Once everything was secured, she hurriedly contacted the police and informed them that a biker gang was outside harassing her. The police assured her that they would send an inspector for assistance. After ending the call, she began hearing loud knocks coming from every side of the hotel, which frightened her. She hid beneath the counter in fear. After a while, the knocking suddenly ceased, giving Nancy a brief moment of relief, until another knock startled her again. Fearfully, she peeked out from under the counter and saw that a police officer had arrived outside. She rushed to open the door for him. Upon entering, the officer informed her that he needed to thoroughly inspect the place. He carefully checked the entire hotel, but found no one there besides Nancy, not even outside the building. After inspecting the area, he informs the police that he hasn't found any signs of danger there. He suggests that it could just be the girl's imagination, and to ease her fear, he decides to stay with her for a while. He then asks Nancy to prepare some coffee for him and takes a seat. His gaze was also making Nancy feel uneasy. After a while, the officer approaches Nancy and tells her to come with him to the police station. He mentions that the gang's crimes have become more frequent and she should file a report. He begins pulling her along, insisting she accompany him. Suddenly, members of the same gang appear from behind and ambush the officer. Within moments, they kill him. Witnessing this terrifies Nancy. Fearing for her safety, she runs and hides inside the garage. She is panicked and doesn't know how to contact anyone for help. Luckily, Bobby had already been on his way to check on her. Seeing him gives Nancy some relief, and she quickly and quietly brings Bobby into the hotel. Meanwhile, the gang members had also entered the hotel. Nancy had messaged her friend, asking her to either come herself or send someone for help. Before they could make a move, the gang captures both Nancy and Bobby. Nancy sees her car keys nearby, but due to her tied hands, she can't reach them. One of the men then tapes Nancy's mouth and hands and locks her in a room. Inside, she manages to free her hands. She was very scared. To save her life from this man picking a knife, she stabs him in the back, because of which that boy immediately dies there. And when Nancy takes off her mask, she is shocked. He was no one else but her hotel's own employee, Petey. In a while, she sees that Bobby was also coming to this room with untied hands. She understood that Bobby is also with these people, and these people are not the previous gang at this time. In fact, they are the employees of her hotel who have come here to take revenge on her. Bobby, who was her friend, also became the member of these people, because today she also insulted Bobby. Now, to find out what they were doing here, the scenes go into a flashback, and we are shown Jack, who was very angry because of losing his job. He wanted to take his revenge on Nancy at any cost. He drops all the colleagues at home, after which he takes Pete and goes to the gang of youngsters who had come out of his hotel this afternoon. As he went here, he took out his knife and injured a gang member, because of which the gang members got scared. Then Jack played a song and made everyone dance to his tunes, after which he held a gun to Pete and asked him to kill the boys here. But Pete was unable to carry out the task, which gave the boys a chance to escape. After that, Jack told Pete to meet him later that night at the restaurant. Once the boys had fled, Jack emerged carrying their masks and clothing. That night, he met with his other teammates. He told them, "I know Nancy has wronged each one of you. She's a terrible manager. If you want revenge, stand with me." Everyone harbored resentment towards Nancy, so they agreed to support him. In fact, Jack was the one orchestrating this entire plan from the start. Bobby joined Jack because he believed Jack only intended to scare Nancy, not harm her. They began by frightening Nancy, but when she called the police, they initially hid. Then, in a panic to protect themselves, they all ended up killing the police officer. At that point, Bobby backed out of Jack's plan, removed his mask, and tried to assist Nancy, as he had always felt some sympathy for her and genuinely liked her. The scene returns to the present, where Nancy is furious after discovering the truth. Meanwhile, Pete, who had been attacked by Nancy, is seriously hurt. The group carries him inside the hotel, now planning to call for help in an attempt to save Pete's life. But who could they possibly reach out to? Who would come to their aid? This was clearly a matter for the authorities. At this moment, we see Bobby spotting Nancy's car keys and picking them up. Just then, one of Jack's colleagues arrived and informed him that Nancy had escaped. On hearing this, Jack became furious and instantly ordered them to go after her. He also instructed Bobby to chase Nancy. However, instead of obeying, Bobby turned on Jack and punched him straight in the face. Meanwhile, Nancy's father was shown trying to call the hotel to check on Nancy, but no one was answering the phone. Back at the hotel, the man pursuing Nancy was scalded when she cleverly splashed boiling hot water on him, burning his entire face. The man was charred to death in seconds. Nancy then quietly slipped into the restroom, where she noticed that Bobby was wounded. Wanting to assist him, she began crawling toward him under the table. Just then, her friend arrived at the hotel. Bobby, lying underneath, tried handing over Nancy's car keys so she could escape. But upon seeing the situation, her friend panicked and fled the scene to save herself, without even thinking of contacting the police. Nancy eventually managed to retrieve her car keys. Seizing the opportunity, she slipped out through the hotel's door, carefully avoiding Jack's gaze. But Jack noticed her escape and chased after her, grabbing her by the hair and stabbing her in the back. After that, he dragged her lifeless body back into the hotel. Jack believed that now everyone else was dead, and he was the only survivor. He stripped off all his clothes and quickly called the police, pretending he had just witnessed the events and wasn't part of the killings. He thought this plan would help him vanish from the city and begin a new life. However, he was unaware of the coming twist. Nancy was still clinging to life. With immense courage, she pulled the knife from her stomach and crawled over to Bobby's lifeless body. She wept bitterly upon seeing him, as Bobby was the only one who truly cared for her. Fueled by a burning desire for revenge, Nancy gathered her strength and got into her car. She drove straight to Jack's house and knocked on his door. Jack, not expecting any visitors, opened it. Without a moment's hesitation, Nancy thrust the knife in her hand deep into his neck. She ended his life and exacted her revenge. The last bit of strength had drained from her body as she pulled herself forward, only to collapse shortly after. In that moment, she longed for her mother. Out of nowhere, a car screeched to a halt beside her, and her father stepped out. Having noticed Nancy's car nearby, he had come looking for her. Seeing his daughter in such a state filled him with concern, and he urgently reassured her, "Stay strong. I'll get you to a doctor. You'll be all right." But Nancy eased his fears and confessed, "I'm pregnant." And with that, the film comes to an end.